couple of weeks ago, I made a video exploring outside the borders of every map in The Witcher 3. In the comments of that video, some of you brought up a great question about another point in the game where we have access to even more maps and areas that in terms of exploration are a bit limited. I'm of course talking about the worlds we visit with Avallac'h during the quest Through Time and Space. In this quest, there are actually a total of 5 different areas that we travel to. And my first question was if we can find a way to explore them before the quest, and if so, what could we find sitting just outside the playable area? Before we get started though, there is one major hurdle in doing this because of the way the quest is designed. To show you what I mean, let's first look at how we start the quest normally. After talking with Avallac'h at the Rosemary and Thyme and learning about how Eredin poisoned their former king to rise to power, Avallac'h shows us his maps of Novigrad's underground and points out a location where a portal will appear, allowing us to traverse worlds. This, of course, leads us to the middle of Novigrad to the quote-unquote haunted house from the Novigrad Dreaming Quest, where Corrine, Tilly, and Sarah are usually found. We ignore the upstairs for now and head into the basement where, sure enough, there is a portal waiting for us. I'm sure Geralt is thrilled. Pay close attention as we go through this portal though, as once we do, we get a full loading screen. Not just the kind where the screen goes black for a moment. This is important because it means the game is loading in a new map, which if you remember from my last few videos means we cannot reach these areas by exploring out of bounds or manipulating any of the main maps such as Velen or Skellige. All hope is not lost though, so we load an early game save, as you can see this one is level 8 and hasn't even seen the Baron yet, and make our way to Novigrad using traditional means. Once arriving, we once again head to the haunted house, and with the help of the door unlocker mod, we pop the main door wide open. The basement hatch also opens right up, but before checking down there, I was curious if Corrine and Sarah were already inside even before the quest had started. After heading upstairs though, there is no trace of either of them anywhere. Too bad. Once in the basement, we blast open this weak wall and then immediately see, as expected, there is no portal. As I said earlier though, there is another less traditional way to get there. Using the Forgotten Worlds mod, we can input a command into the debug menu to force the game to load in the separate map. Links to all the tools I use will be down in the description. After loading for a bit, sure enough, we find ourselves in the Diddiwed Desert? I have no idea how to pronounce that. You can immediately notice that the desert looks different here, and that is because the game is no longer locking the time of day, and time is passing normally. Nighttime actually makes it look even more unique in my opinion. It was really easy for me to get absorbed in the atmosphere and just wander around the area now that there was no rush from a certain elf who walks at 2 miles per hour. I also find it interesting just how useless the map is in this area. I never noticed this before. Was it like this during the regular quest as well? But as we explore, we can see that the actual playable area of this map is rather small. Near the end of the path where the sand crabs and portal usually spawn, this time there is nothing to be found. Using NVIDIA Ancel, we can get a much wider and more holistic view of the desert. Immediately, we can see how CDPR has designed the area in such a way to make it feel much larger and expansive when looking into the distance. Many rock formations, terrain elements, and forced perspective techniques are used to strategically give the illusion that beyond our small walkable path, there is a whole planet of desert just out of reach. Things get interesting as we head to the west, however, as the desert textures suddenly turn to snow out of nowhere. And even further, we stumble upon a very familiar city which happens to be none other than the NL homeworld of Tir na Lia, the area where we later encounter Gels. By backtracking a little, we can also find the Ice Plains area just over the mountain. CDPR has used one map for the whole Through Time and Space quest, with each area being strategically separated and hidden so that there is no overlap or evidence of the other's existence. This is not only genius, but extremely surprising to me, as it feels strange to know that just by walking a little ways, you can end up in an entirely different world. I was starting to get some ideas for later, but for now we can use the mod to once again place us in the next world, being the Poison Valley. Once arriving, we can see that the valley is, well, poisonous. Imagine that. So we enable God mode so that we can explore at a more leisurely and oxygen-filled pace. Immediately we see something interesting. At the end of the area we can see what looks to be the portal sitting in its usual spot. I was eager to check it out, but first we needed to look around the other areas as well. We meditate to give us a bit more visibility, but not much thanks to the mist everywhere. Later, we can find the remnants of what look to be huge animals that inhabited this area previously, as well as some ruins of what I can assume was some sort of elven architecture given the fact that it shares textures with some other buildings we can see in the game. We can also find the place of power in its usual spot, and can use it normally. A bit of an abstract way to get an extra skill point, but who am I to judge? We finally make our way to the area with the portal, but before interacting with it, let's take a look around using Ansel once again. Similar to the desert, we can find a ton of map development and terrain far beyond the playable area. Everything is so fleshed out that it honestly makes me wonder if there was more intended for these areas than what made it in the final game. Just over the mountain, the environment switches to snow again, and we can once again find the Snow Plains map. Everything is much closer than you would think. Back to the portal now. After jumping into it, surprisingly nothing happens. It appears that this is just a particle effect and the actual trigger has not been loaded in yet. I guess you got lucky this time, Geralt. No worries though, as we can once again load ourselves into the next area, being the underwater world. Once again, we can see that the portal is already loaded in, and thanks to God mode, we don't have to worry about drowning, so we're free to explore as we like. To the left, there are some elven ruins, complete with statues and some valuable ores in these two pots. I had never realized until now that this area was probably above water at one point, and had later become flooded. I'm curious if there's any further lore about this location or how it became submerged. Because you usually have to worry about drowning and hurrying to the portal in normal gameplay, this area is much smaller and a bit claustrophobic. Using Ansel, we can see just how cramped it is in here. I did have an idea as to how we could see what was on the outside of this cave. I'm sure you guys have no idea where this is going. As I've said before, it is truly astonishing how effective the boat method is in this game. We are now sitting underneath the normal map and just on top of the water layer. CDPR appears to have just created a little pocket of terrain underneath the map to give the illusion of this isolated area. We can confirm this using Ansel, and likewise by looking out through the terrain we can see that we are once again able to see the Snow Plains area. Everything leads back to the Snow Plains for some reason. Speaking of that area, we use the mod once again to load ourselves in, and now we're in one of my favorite parts of the entire game. I can never get enough of that satisfying feeling of breaking open the ice. Since God mode is still on, we don't have to worry about freezing to death, so we can explore freely. Taking the normal path at first, we can see that all of the loot is here waiting for us. And after sliding down to the first house, even the various travelers' notes are here to read early. I actually had a lot of fun running around and taking a closer look at this place without Geralt complaining of, dying of frostbite. So I highly recommend you guys try this out for yourselves as well. I had never noticed before just how many buildings there are in this area. So many of them are already almost completely submerged by frost, and CDPR once again placed an extra amount outside of the normal path to show how big this village or city used to be before the White Frost took over. Somehow, there is one singular tree that has survived this whole thing. Maybe Eridan should have spent less time looking for Ciri and more time trying to grow more of these. In the main village area now, we can enter many of the houses and buildings, once again making me wonder what the design process was for this area. Did CDPR build out the village and then imagine it frosted over? I'm curious what earlier versions may have looked like. We eventually find our way to the lighthouse, and by climbing to the top, we can actually light the fire as usual. We get our money's worth out of God mode and head down underneath the lighthouse where the portal would usually spawn. Since the quest trigger is not present, it is of course not here. But as usual, we can use the mod to move us just over the mountainside to the next map. Tir na Liah is one of those areas in the game that made me fall in love with The Witcher 3's map design. We spend maybe a total of 5 minutes in this area in an actual playthrough, but regardless, CDPR spent so much time fleshing out the details and making it feel alive. The atmosphere, including the fountains, statues, gentle candlelight, and intricate stone architecture, is so unique and really sells the feel of an ancient civilization preserved carefully for centuries. Something interesting to point out is that many of these iron gates can be opened using the Door Unlocker mod, and surprisingly there is actually quite a bit of detail beyond them. Back to the main area now, we can see the area where Gels would normally be, painting the elven woman and demonetizing my live streams. Just take a look at this overlook. That city and castle area looks so real and detailed, and I love how the snow is starting to become visible as the white frost slowly starts to take over their world. We can once again meditate to get a quick sunset view as well. What a treat. The painting is of course still here. YouTube, be kind, this is art. And just behind it and past this statue area, we can open another iron gate. From here, we can see some of the modeling and design of the main area, and by climbing up a ways, we can find this area of thick vines and stone pillars that seem to be just extra detail. Okay, I'm too curious, so I jumped off the balcony down to the lower level to see how much I can explore. There are actually 2 large houses on this level, which I had no idea existed. Similar to some of the buildings in Novigrad, the exterior is high detail and gives the illusion of something being inside, but once walking through, we can see there's actually nothing there. Using N-Cell, it's time to take a closer look at the castle across the water. There is actually a bridge connecting the 2 areas, but it appears to have no collision, so walking across it would be impossible. Not surprisingly, the city and surrounding area appears to be low res and low poly textures to save system memory, but you really can't tell at all when looking from the playable area. There are a couple of bridges that lead to nothing, which was pretty amusing, and this large castle area is actually a lot wider than I thought by just looking at it from afar. There's actually a large body of water behind it, and even further there is actually another castle or city clipping into the terrain. This would be barely visible by the player from a normal perspective, but it is just a testament to CDPR's attention to detail to put this here to make sure there is no hole in immersion. Though we can't walk across the bridge, with a far enough jump we can get past the invisible barrier and make it into the large body of water at the bottom of the cliff. Here we can summon our boat and get a unique perspective of Tir na Liah and a closer view of the massive waterfalls. So that's just about all we can see by going to the Forgotten Worlds before the quest. But one question still remained. What happens if we try to go out of bounds during the quest and make it to Tir na Liah without Avallac'h? After loading back into our save that we made, we ditch the elf immediately and head to the right over this canyon area that I found previously that seemed very jumpable. After trying not to slide into the pit and making a few precise jumps, we can make it to the other side. Using N-Cell, we can see that just over this cliff we should be free to explore the outer terrain, so we start climbing. About halfway through I switched to series so that I would slide less, and that helped a lot, as we eventually made it to the top with no problems. Here we can get a great overlook of the further desert areas, and we can actually see where the different maps intersect, as we can see desert, grass, and snow textures all in one place. Sadly, we do hit a roadblock here after many attempts, even with God mode enabled. It seems as though we cannot make it off this plateau without hitting a death trigger. CDPR must have thought ahead. I do have a backup plan though. Back at the main area, we head left this time and walk along the edge until we find a section without an invisible barrier. This took quite a few attempts, as you can see. But if we scale the side of this cliff and jump outwards just enough to avoid the kill barrier, we can end up at the base of this canyon where we can eventually begin to climb our way up. It appears that we're home free, but after sliding down we fall through the map. I was afraid this would happen, but it appears that CDPR has disabled collision in areas that are far away from the playable area. We can confirm this using N-Cell, as by using the camera we can clip through the ground in every connecting piece of terrain between areas. So we use our backup plan once again, and use the Forgotten Worlds mod to place us in Tir na Liah manually. Once arriving, sadly, not much has changed, but we can see that the time of day is locked once again to the time that it would be during the actual quest, which leads me to believe that the trigger to enable Gels in the cutscenes is actually the portal from the Snowy Plains area. I guess we need to make our own entertainment then. So let's give everyone the battle the fan base deserves. Yeah, Aridin, you're still underwhelming even on your own turf. That's a shame. Look, Ciri was literally right where you wanted her to be and you still couldn't do anything. That's embarrassing. As always, thank you all so much for watching this video, and once again, thank you to all of you who gave me this idea. I'm always open to new suggestions, so feel free to comment yours down below. And if you want more updates and a place to connect with other members of the community, the link to my Discord is in the description below. I have some interesting plans for the channel in the near future as we start to hit the quote-unquote dark ages leading up to the Witcher 4 release, so be sure to stay tuned, and thank you all so much for your patience and support. Until next time, thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you very soon.